Well, hello. I'm back with you again. This is Emergency Management Made Easy with Lauren. Class 29, attention. Attention, no one can leave this property. Shelter in place or long-term in-place sheltering. Let's talk about it. This is new. Evacuating people may not be the best response to an emergency such as tornado, hurricanes, windstorms, thunderstorms, hailstorms, or toxic gas release. In-place sheltering may either be short-term, such as remaining in a safe place for a fairly short period while a tornado warning is in effect, or while a chemical cloud passes. We also use the term shelter for churches or otherwise mass care facilities that provide a place to stay along with food and water to people who evacuate following a disaster. Policy for some houses of worship is 72-hour non-perishable food and water is to be stored. Remember, nuts, peanut butter is a food allergy alert. 1 gallon of water for each person or store enough for emergencies. Remain in the shelter until local authorities say it is okay to leave. Otherwise, no one is to leave here. Maintain a 24-hour communication and safety watch. Take turns listening for radio broadcasts and monitor your tone alert weather radio. Assemble an emergency toilet if necessary. Use garbage container, pail or bucket with snug fitting cover. If the container is small, use a larger container with a cover for waste disposal. Line both containers with plastic bags. After each use, pour or sprinkle a small amount of disinfectant or bleach into the container to reduce odor and germs. During certain emergencies, it is crucial to assess the safest option for everyone involved. In some cases, remaining indoors and minimizing movement can reduce exposure to hazards outside, especially when conditions are rapidly changing or unpredictable. Making informed decisions based on real-time updates and official guidance helps keep everyone secure. So it seems as though these facilities are prepared that I'm talking about. August 29, 2005. Hurricane Katrina makes landfall near Grand Island, Louisiana as a Category 3 storm with winds near 127 miles per hour. Severe flooding damage to cities along the Gulf Coast from New Orleans to leading authorities to conduct emergency evacuation of the Superdome. The total damage from Katrina was an estimated $125 billion in 2024 dollars. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA facilities, NOAA reports direct deaths of 520, indirect deaths, 565 people, Indeterminate cause, 307. Total number of fatalities, 1,392 people. So what went wrong? We have an example of what it could look like on a smaller scale if things are in place. Hurricane Katrina exposed major shelter problems, including the insufficient capacity and unpreparedness of facilities like the Superdome, which quickly became overwhelmed. Critical failures included a lack of official planning for pets, leading to forced abandonment and a breakdown in coordination and communication between agencies. Other issues involve inadequate food, water, and sanitation, and limited access to medical care for residents with chronic conditions. Shelter capacity and infrastructure. Pencils up, because this is a good one. Overcrowding. Facilities like the Superdome and Convention Center were not built to handle the sheer volume of people they were forced to shelter for extended periods, leading to unsanitary and crowded conditions. Lack of preparedness. I'm going to say it again. Lack of preparedness. Many shelters were not designed for large-scale, long-term refuge. And key state and local governments failed to adequately prepare for the scale of the disaster. Logistics and operations. Communication failures. A major breakdown in communication between local and state federal agencies hindered the ability to respond effectively, partly due to competing command systems and incompatible technology. Same problem we had during Hurricane Sandy here in Maryland and throughout the United States. We discovered there were major communication inadequacies, and we at the federal, state level have done everything we can to address them. Inadequate supplies. We just talked about that when it's done right. Many evacuees in shelters reported going without sufficient food and water. Can you imagine? We just weren't ready for Katrina. Pet abandonment. There was no official plan for pets, and shelters refused them, forcing owners to make the devastating choice between their safety and leaving their animals behind. That's tough. Our animals, in many cases, are like our children. Yes, our love for them is that deep. Health and social issues. You know, we've been talking about that throughout our presentations, throughout our classes together. And it's funny because it's all accumulative. It's all coming together. Everything that we have already learned is rolling into other areas in which we must pay attention to. So health and social issues. Let's look. Lack of medical care. Many evacuees had chronic health conditions and relied on the destroyed New Orleans hospital system, but limited medical resources were available in the shelters. Psychological stress. The entire experience from the storm to the shelter conditions and the uncertainty of their future caused significant physical and emotional stress for evacuees. Lack of resources. After leaving the shelters, many evacuees in places like Houston had few personal resources, with low percentages reporting having a bank account, a credit card, or relatives to stay with. Now that is a crying shame. Major public shelters. Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana, initially served as a refuge of last resort. For those who could not evacuate the city, it sheltered thousands but became overwhelmed and faced criticism for its conditions through no fault of their own. Astrodome, Houston, Texas, became a major shelter for tens of thousands of evacuees who were relocated from the Superdome and other overwhelmed areas. Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center, New Orleans, Louisiana, also served as a shelter of last resort, with thousands taking refuge there during the storm. Other types of shelters. Hotels and motels. Many evacuees found temporary housing in hotels and motels in neighboring cities and states. State and military bases. Facilities like state parks and military bases were used to house large numbers of people. Cruise ships. Some ships were used to provide temporary shelter for evacuees. Friends and relatives' homes. A significant number of people stayed with friends and family outside of the affected areas. Challenges and outcomes. Many shelters were not equipped for the number of people seeking refuge, leading to shortages of food, water, and medical supplies. The scale of displacement was immense, with many people unable to be reunited with family members for extended periods. Can you imagine? The lack of a pet inclusive policy in most evacuation plans forced many families to make difficult decisions, leaving pets behind and contributing to a separate animal welfare crisis. OSHA regulations. Let's look at them. Regarding shelter-in-place procedures, focus on ensuring employees' safety during emergencies such as chemical spills or natural disasters. Overview of shelter-in-place procedures. OSHA defines shelter-in-place as a safety measure that involves remaining indoors during an emergency rather than evacuating. This is often recommended when there is a risk of exposure to hazardous materials or environmental threats. Employees are responsible for developing and implementing effective shelter-in-place plans to protect their employees. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to say it again. Employers are responsible for developing and implementing effective shelter-in-place plans to protect their employees. Houses of worship too. Pastors too. Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA. Key elements of OSHA shelter regulations. 1, emergency planning. At the table, what are we doing? We are planning. We are adding or subtracting what we don't need and what does or does not work. Employers must have a comprehensive emergency action plan, a EAP, or a training plan. You know, when you all get together to discuss your safety needs, and we have covered this for many months, emergency action plan, training plan, whatever you want to call it. That includes procedures for sheltering in place. This plan should outline the circumstances under which employees should shelter in place, the locations designated for sheltering, and the necessary supplies and equipment. just like that first example I gave you. Training and drills. Employees should be trained on the shelter-in-place procedures, including how to recognize when to shelter, where to go, and what to do once inside the shelter. Regular drills should be conducted to ensure that employees are familiar with procedures. Communication. Employers must establish clear communication channels to inform employees of emergencies and provide instruction on sheltering in place. This may include alarms, public address systems, or mobile alerts. Shelter requirements. The shelter should be a designated area within the workplace that is safe from external hazards. It should have adequate ventilation supplies and communication equipment to support employees during the sheltering period. Monitoring and evaluation. After an incident, employers should evaluate the effectiveness of the shelter-in-place procedure and make necessary adjustments to improve future responses. That is what you training managers and employees do when you get together. When you, after an incident, or preferably before an incident, you're talking about this. We've talked about how to evacuate, but let's talk about the best way, the best practices for remaining sheltered in a building, in a facility, in a store. Additional standards for emergency shelters. While OSHA provides guidelines for workplace shelter-in-place procedures, other regulations may apply to sheltering emergency shelters, particularly those receiving federal assistance. For example, shelters must meet specific safety, sanitation, and accessibility standards to ensure the well-being of occupants. These standards include structural integrity, adequate ventilation, and access to clean water and sanitation facilities. By adhering to OSHA regulations and best practices for shelter-in-place procedures, employers can help ensure the safety and health of their employees during emergencies. For more detailed information, employers can refer to OSHA's official guidelines and resources. Quick quiz question. Oh, she's back from vacation, and I'm raring to go. Quick quiz question. Are you ready? OSHA definition of shelter in place. Shelter in place refers to a safety protocol where individuals seek immediate refuge within buildings or designated safe areas to protect themselves from external hazards, such as chemical spills, severe weather, or other emergencies. This procedure creates a barrier between occupants and potential dangers inside. This, too, is news you can use as we approach challenging weather conditions. Here in Maryland, it's still fall, but winter is coming. Remember, you cannot leave this building. Work, school, church, grocery store, hospital. It's just too dangerous out there. You can't leave. Contact me. Email me. Prepare before it happens at outlook.com. And I am Lauren Holly Allen, your favorite instructor, and you are my favorite colleagues and students. See you next Friday.